This is the first train to Edgemore, and these are Holman coaches, but they're not our Holman coach. These were the first group of 3. When these were built, they originally ordered 40. The Holman plant burned down before the earthquake, actually like a week before the earthquake, with several of the cars in it. And these were obviously built in the new factory at 18th and Indiana. The first one was down around Front Street somewhere. Anyway, the signs are for Edgemore, Rockaway, I think, and the Salada Beach Depot sales office, land office.
This one here, John? This one here?
Yeah, absolute sales office. Salada Beach Depot was finished in 1908. I think it's under construction here. It was built with concrete bricks, or hollow bricks that were made in Salada Beach. Of course, the castle. Wow. That's Francisco Boulevard and the castle. And if you see on the left side, there's a boom. It's still under construction. This is the artist's conception of Brighton Beach. I haven't been around that long to see this, so if anyone has seen this, let me know. The railroad ran back of the thing where the highway runs today, and it was quite a plan. It says contemplated improvements. So this is the real Brighton Beach. That's down in dirty Brighton Beach. These are people that came down on the train to buy land, and they're waiting for the train to take them to someplace warm. So this is this is the last locomotive they bought, a Baldwin, and it's right above, just above Brighton Beach Depot, heading up on the fill, heading for the cut, Valleymore Cut, they called it.
John, wasn't that very close to where we're sitting now?
Yeah, yeah, it's very close. It may be down the hill a bit, but it's very close to where we're sitting. And that was the cut at Valleymore. Here they're widening the cut for the road.
It's the construction.
And it has a 3-rail system. Yeah, they have a narrow gauge contractors. That's the Rockaway Beach Quarry in the early days. Valleymore in an unhappy situation. I guess it had quite a past before it became a restaurant. This is an overall view of Rockaway, showing the quarry on the left and the little tiny hole in the hill. When I was a kid, that hole was about 3 times that big, and then it got so there was just the hole. There was really no hill left. You can see the depot is on by that cut on the right. Yeah, right there is the depot.
Which one?
That's Rockaway Depot.
Yeah.
And the town of Rockaway was not what the brochure said it was going to be. That it was. There's a whole train in the background and another train near the depot. It's hard to see.
Right here.
Yeah. And they hauled a lot of rock from the quarry.
This is a train here too, John, going in.
Yeah, that's another train on the Y up there. There's the depot. It was it was functional, but it was not elegant. But it was a depot. Of course, Point Rockaway. I interviewed an ex-employee in the 70s named Tom Wilson, who was a conductor on the line, and he told me an interesting story. He had some hooligans on the train, and he had a tide table and was a fisherman and whatnot. And they were acting up, but they were kind of hogging the rear platform on the observation car. So he knew Rockaway was coming up, and they were sitting out there, and being little punks or whatever they were. He didn't have much use for them, so he forgot to tell them that it was that time of the year where the Maverick waves crashed over the train. So they came in soaked, and he said all the trainmen were laughing because they knew they'd done it before, This is a view of Pedro Valley from Kathleen Manning's house. I'm pretty close to it. And so in the, down on the, let's see, down right in here was the site of the depot. It looks like it has not been built yet. And back here was the temporary Y where they turned the trains. So this dates this to 1907. And they were working on the tunnel, so that was the end of the line. They had to turn all the trains down there, engines, everything. The Ocean Shore didn't even own a turntable. They did everything on Ys. And of course, all the artichoke plants, and that trees are part of the Tobin estate, I'm assuming. There's the shot of the terrace by the sea, San Pedro, Shelter Cove later. They had different signs on it. It was Tobin for a while. There, that's the depot today. You can see it's at Danman Avenue and Shelter Cove. So just heading south past that point, you see some of the special trains that were running to Granada, which means this photo was made after 1908 and probably before 1909, because the Railroad Commission got very upset when they found out they were running benches on flat cars for people to ride the train to get a free box lunch and buy land in Granada. So they got rid of that idea. So you see the tunnel portal?
Yeah.
That's Pedro Tunnel. This is the north portal of Pedro Tunnel. This is an accident right in that same vicinity. Here's the tunnel on the south end being built. They have a little trail around the left side of the hill where the workers brought supplies and dynamite and black powder and whatnot. And so that was how they built the line. They put little foothold and then they kept making it bigger and bigger. But so the tunnel was very important because they couldn't progress down to Half Moon Bay and Tenitas and whatnot till they got the tunnel finished. After it was completed, the Ransom Construction Company got a brilliant idea, Ransom and Crummy it was called, to put their rock bunker and take advantage of gravity. The rocks were naturally falling all the time there, so they put a bunker and they take an engine and back the gondola cars and fill them full of rock for free. Just no machinery, just gravity. And the problem with gravity is it can be your friend or not. You know, here's what happened to the quarry. And you can see the people are probably using the same trail to get from one train to another. They're going, if you see the lady looking back, her expression says it all.
Dag nabbit.
Yeah, you expect me to do what? So there they are. There are some of them at the top of the little trail, and they had to go do that to get to San Francisco. And here's the one of the last years the train ran. It went out in 1920. This is one of their inventions to cut down on costs, was to buy a motor car with a gasoline motor. It was built by Meister in Sacramento. And the passengers liked it because the alternative was to take that train off completely. So they replaced the steam train, which was very expensive to run, with the cheap gas car. If you notice, the tunnel portal on the left side has been blocked off with rock. So it was a double track tunnel, but ended up single track. Here's after the railroad went out, somebody ventured back there. I'm sure it was popular. There was some question as to rum runners using it to store their contraband. And the highway department allegedly blew up both ends of the tunnel. And here's a famous shot on double slide. And the left side, you can see that trestles are built on the side of the hill. And they did that because they couldn't really spend the money or the manpower to grade anymore. They just wait for a slide, and when the slide took out a trestle or part of the track, they just build a new trestle, because wood was a lot cheaper than labor, you know. And that was part of the, on the employee's timetable, it says that part of the railroad, when on the map side, it says this is not permanent, don't trust this map because it changes. Construction camp at Green Canyon. So now we're south of Pedro and we're heading down towards Montero. This is a construction camp. You can see a dump car in the background. And the famous cut is where the car is in the back. Later they put a tank right there. And there's the tank. A train coming up, coming down, southbound train, pausing for water at the Green Canyon tank. Later they put 2 tanks because the bigger engines needed more water. Here's the double tank. This is a construction of the Martini Creek Bridge. This is the same shot looking up. The trestle would be in the very end of the track up here. The embankment and the depot right here. Yeah. That embankment is heading to the Montero depot, which this is taken from the depot. There's the Montero station. You can see Montero in the hills. Montero was started by Har Wagner as an artist colony and a colony for the patrons of the arts and writers, and Har was a publisher. So.
Bodacious hats.
Yeah, those were not the cheap hats. So in 1916, the railroad had a fill. You can see the tracks going across the fill that looks like a dam. The culverts plugged up, and this thing filled up with lots of water. So what the railroad did, they didn't want to be responsible for taking out the fog signal and get sued by the government. So they dynamited the right-of-way. There was a track suspended in air. Later, they put a trestle in there later. And this shot is the metropolis of Fairlawn City. You can see it's probably bigger than Burlingame on the map here. But it has, it shows the contraption that captured the beach sand. It actually shows on the artist rendition of the postcard. This is a postcard.
That up there, John?
Yeah, that's the sand loader. This was actually Fairlawn City. It was fairly busy for a while. The Ocean Shore kept 1 or 2 helpers there at all times, because leaving the Montero was a downgrade. Then it went up for about a 2.5% grade going up to Green Canyon. So there's the Flink Hotel is still there. I think that big hotel on the far left.
This building too, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the post office, I think.
Post office.
And the depot is here, freight depot, and the hotel.
That's freight and that's passenger, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is probably an average Sunday at Moss Beach. That's a very long train for the Ocean Shore. Here's the gas car again. They had 2. This was the only one photographed on the line. It was number 61. And this is probably the end of World War I, unless it's 4th of July during World War I, but it's 1918 is when they got the car, so this shot shows the Liberty Bond poster on the back. And here's one of our dreaded manure cars on the ground. It's, you know, it didn't turn over or anything, but it was people wanted their picture taken with it. And I don't know if they knew what they were doing.
Dirty Jobs TV program, that would give you a candidate for it.
Now this one, Barbara Vanderwerf wrote a whole book on this, so I'm just going to breeze through it. This is Granada, laid out by the famous architect Daniel Burnham. It was in these rings that started at the depot and then went outward, and each ring, each road was higher than the one below it, so everybody had a view of the ocean. And initially it didn't get built as quickly and completely as they'd hoped, but today it's quite a place to live. This is a shot showing what it looked like when they first got there. And you can see there's little stakes in the ground where the people's lots start. And down in the center is the depot and a train. It's kind of hard to make out from.
That's the train and that's the depot.
Yeah, that was the depot that may still be there as a house. This was the Granada depot on one of those free lunch days. And everyone came down to look at the real estate. You have to remember, after the earthquake, quite a few people were probably looking to relocate out of San Francisco. So they had a good opportunity to move down the coast. This was the temporary Y at Granada. This was a spot where they were going to have their main office. They were going to have shops, complete office building, and living quarters for the railroad workers, and the powerhouse to power the whole line was going to be located here. But the earthquake changed all that. This is the freight depot. It's probably pretty busy for a while. You see the boards on the flat car, that's someone's whole house is probably on that, you know. They did build a lot of houses in Granada. There's the main, the jewel in the crown of the Ocean Shore Railroad was this depot at Granada. This picture is interesting because on the far left is could be 1409. I can't read the number, but it's identical. This is Granada, and their Granada sales office on the left, and the Granada clubhouse down by the beach, and Granada depot through the artichokes. You can see in the background there weren't a lot of homes built, but there were a few. First train to Half Moon Bay, October 12, 1908. This is waiting for the first train. That's the freight depot that's seldom photographed. And the main Half Moon Bay depot that's now living near the Johnson House on display. It was the Methodist church for a while as a social hall. There's the Half Moon Bay depot showing the Verde Tunnel and Smelter #1 built by White Motor Car Company. And it's being tested. There's Arleta in 1938. There's Arleta in 1976, I think. That's Adolph Siegel, the engineer. He was the last engineer. This is the Pierce and the Creek Trestle. This is Lobitos, an interesting shot from my grandfather had it in his stuff, you know, and that on the back it tells about this guy who built the depot. He's standing there. It must have had a red roof because somebody hand-colored the roof. Now we reach the end of the line at Tanitas. It's an interesting place in itself, and it's still kind of mysterious that the Ocean Shore Railroad met the stagecoach, and the stagecoach is in this picture on the left. And that stagecoach is heading for Swanton, which is 26 miles away. In 1908, they tore down the big trestle in San Francisco on the Florida Street alignment. They moved it all down here, all the lumber, and reassembled it as the Tanitas Creek trestle. This is the guy on the right in the overalls. I don't know if he's related, but he married into our family in the old days. That's Johnny Kerr, and that's the stagecoach to head to Swanton. Pescadero, Swanton, San Gregorio, you had to take the stagecoach. This is the Tenitas Trestle right after completion. In the background is Long Bridge, they called it. That was the county road bridge that the road followed the ocean shore pretty closely, except it was pretty windy in most places and really dusty and wet, slippery in the winter. This is the remains of the trestle on the left. The depot, Tenitas Depot, was on the other side, and then the cut through the cliff is evident there. There's a Tenitas Depot. It burned in 1967. I think some people were staying in there and they forgot to put out their fire that was in the floor. Here's a happy group of people. The train in the picture is heading north at Tenitas. It had been turned on the Y and headed all the way back down 9 miles backwards. And that's how you got to Tenitas. The guy on the left is named Orville Smith, and this O.S. Smith was his initials, so they called him Ocean Shore Smith. The other guys I'm not sure of. This is the sad picture. The last trestle built was Palmer Gulch, and it never received rails. It was built in 1909, and just a waste of money. Here's Palmer Gulch with famous rail fan Rudy Brandt on it in 1938. You notice the sag in it. There's Palmer Gulch Trestle in 1957. Ray and I went there, I don't know, 70s sometime, and found some of the bents were still there. Most of it had been taken for fence posts and stuff like that. So the ocean shore, if they could have built to, even to San Gregorio, they would have picked up an awful lot of lumber business. This is the La Honda Road, where there's very treacherous. They all cut lumber all the way to Redwood City and San Mateo that way. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't allow this today. Dammed the whole creek for their log pond, but that was one of the customers they could have had if they'd gone down to Pescadero. Pescadero, they formed their own railroad that was going to run from where Coburn's Folly was. I don't have a picture of that today, but it was going to run up to the timber and through Pescadero from the ocean shore. The Stanley Steamer at Tenitas, in 1914 they bought two. And they provided pretty good service, except that to go the 26 miles took 5 hours. Here's what with the top up. This is the auto stage. You can see Swanton, 9 o'clock. Pigeon Point, 10:15. San Gregorio, 11:30. Tenitas, 2 p.m. So that was not rapid transit. Pescadero was an industrious town, produced a lot of cheese and raised crops, a lot of hay. And they hauled their produce down to the Point Año Nuevo and to Gordon's Chute in the old days, but they had to haul it to the ships. The ocean shore would have also tapped a lot of that produce and lumber out of there. This is the north end of the Southern Division. They had a cordwood cutter there, cut cordwood and shipped it by rail. The main thing up here was there was some passenger service from the employees at Davenport that lived in Davenport or Santa Cruz would take the passenger train to work at the San Vicente lumber company operation up at Big Creek. So they had a pretty big lumber operation, and in fact they built the largest sawmill in Santa Cruz County, right in Santa Cruz city limits. This is looking up the switch at Little Creek, and that's where the lumber came from. The lumber company interchanged here with the ocean shore. Here's a train with logs and a couple passenger coaches on the back. It doesn't look safe to me, but this is near Davenport. Santa Cruz, the line was left with a very small, cramped entrance to Santa Cruz. They could have had some business out of there, but the SP made sure they didn't get any good depot site. They kept fighting in the courts. If the line were really completed and electric, they would have gotten most of the business of the casinos and the beaches. This is their depot, the little building in Santa Cruz. In the background is the Southern Pacific shops. So you can see the difference. I'm surprised there are any passengers at all getting on the ocean shore.
You had to walk up a hill too.
Yeah, they had to walk from the beach quite a ways. So we're up to the railroad car business. This is a railroad car that was given to me in 1982 by its owner.
Wow.
It was exact duplicate of 1409. I tried to get the railroad museums to take it, the state, anybody with a big backyard, and no dice, so it sat and sat and sat. And it was getting pretty bad, but it was a Holman that had the same early history as the 1409. It was part of the 5-car order from Holman in 1909, and it got here by way of Bechtel Corporation. It was their number 300, and before that it was on the San Joaquin Eastern, I believe. Another shot, the other side. This shot I think was 2009. This shot is the same car, 2011. So we missed this one, but Scott got a few pieces off of it. We picked up some of the hardware and brought it down, but there wasn't much left by the time they destroyed it. So neighbors complained to the county, so the county gave them 30 days to tear it down, as it was a nuisance. Now it's not. So that's the end of my presentation. And the little guy in the back of the Ocean Shore car is Will Whitaker, who was a famous rail fan, and his father took this picture.